Hello everyone, welcome to a different kind of video for the Toby Swan audio, now just called Toby Swan channel. I've been debating on this for quite some time, but I decided to go ahead and go through with it. If you're seeing the title of this video, yes, I'm going to be reading Jeff the Killer, Rewritten. Now, obviously, Jeff the Killer is not an original story. All the credits go to the original author, who I will link below, along with the original story and everything like that. Again, this is not my story. I have loved creepypastas and everything of that nature since I was a little kid. So I decided a while back to go ahead and try to rewrite it in my own vision. Now, whether it's better or worse, I'm not the judge of that. But I figured I would write it, and now I'm here to share it with you guys. This was written quite a while ago, so if it's not that great, I am terribly sorry. If you guys would like to hear more stories that I'm rewriting, let me know. Again, not mine. So without further ado, let's begin. The moon is wonderful, don't you know? It almost has this strange yet mysterious, mystifying hold on us. Sure, it changes the tides of the water, but it also changes the tides of our lives. Though, maybe that's a little too deep for you. A taller and thin-looking figure was spouting through a window. He sported a long white hoodie, dark-colored jeans, and jet black hair that almost didn't seem real, almost like some sort of figure. This figure, though, was turned away from everything else, staring up at the moon in the sky, rather than behind him. Once he didn't get the response he needed from the small speech, he turned around, finally showing his face. It was horrendous. The only thing that could be seen was a big, slit smile, and his eyes, they were unwavering, piercing at the young kid who was on the bed. He quivered in fear at the figure, who began to shush slowly. Shh, 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 no, shh. He began to pull out a large butcher knife from within his jacket pocket. Shush now. You can't wake your parents now, can you? Just go to sleep. Go to sleep. He got closer to the boy's face, which was now almost hidden all but under the covers. The figure began to chuckle, as if the pain in the boy's face caused him an unnerving sense of joy. Before any heinous acts could be committed, the boy awoke from his bed. It was now morning, to which this seemed to just be one terrible nightmare he was having. He quickly moved across his bed, dragging himself in his footy pajamas and onto the floor. He scurried down the stairs and over to a small table where his dad was reading a news article on his phone. On the phone, he saw the same picture of the boy from his nightmare. While the face was scary enough, what scared him even more was just the headline alone. The headline read as follows: Mental patient from a small city escapes institution. A few months earlier. In a nice suburban town, a little minivan was driving down the street. A small bike hitched to the back with some boxes in the car. Inside was a man with glasses driving this minivan. There was a woman in the passenger seat on her phone, a younger boy in the back seat, very much asleep, and one last boy who seemed to be around his teenage years. He sported black hair which came down close to his neck and over his eyes. He sported a white hoodie with some dark-colored jeans, and this showed that this was the boy from before, yet now he was changed. Jeff? Jeff, did you hear me? The woman asked, turning around to him. The woman had darker brown hair, along with a nice button-up and some slacks to complement. While the scenery around them did seem sunny, the dash told them that the temperature was a bit cooler that day in particular. The father, on the other hand, wore similar clothing with a button-up and slacks. However, he seemed to be more casual, rather than formal or trying to look good. Huh? No, sorry. Jeff said while turning to her. I just looked on Next Door Neighbor app. You know, the one I've been telling you to get. Keeps you connected and all, but apparently there are kids here your age. Nice change of pace, right? She asked, somewhat interested in her son's friendships, obviously. I guess, though I'm not sure what difference it'll make, he said, replying pessimistically. His mother sighed, shaking her head slightly before turning back to the road in front of them. Before long, they had pulled into the driveway of a 2-story home. It was a very beautiful, nice home, with a nice front lawn and a for sale sign that had been out front, though the bold word sold had been put over that sign. Once the family pulled in, they slowly got out of the minivan, pouring out towards the front door to greet their new, indefinite home. So, how do you guys like it? Asked the father while opening the front door. Once the family all poured inside, they began to gawk and look in amazement at the gorgeous interior. The paint had been redone, there was furniture all around, everything they needed to get the ground running. I do have to say, it is nice, Jeff said, turning to his father with the faintest of smiles. The mother ushered the boys upstairs, and once they were both out of earshot, the two parents began to talk and discuss about the boys. You know, I think this move will do wonders for him, he said optimistically. I think it will, hopefully. Change some things and hopefully move some things around so we don't have a repeat. This made the father nod his head and look down at the ground, which is when Jeff began to walk down the stairs with his brother. So, how do you and Lou like it? Have you guys picked out any rooms yet? She asked them, mainly asking the younger of the two. I picked out the bigger one. I can fit all my toys and stuff in there. I can, put a lot in there. Very awesome. Lou nodded with excitement. Really? Well, what about you, Jeff? She turned to him, asking to get his input. Oh, yeah, I couldn't say no. The mother slightly smiled, rubbing both of their heads, causing their hairs to become messy. Lou giggled while Jeff just ended up fixing his hair instead. While the family joined in on taking a full tour of the house, a slight knock came to the door. To their surprise, they turned to the door in confusion. Their dad took it upon himself to answer it. Hello? Hi there. My name is Evelyn. You must be the Hodex, is that correct? The woman at the front door asked with unusual excitement and thrill in her voice. That's correct. I'm Peter. This is my wife, Margaret. After all shaking hands, he turned around, opening the door more for her to come in. And as she did so, she patted her boots on the rug and then fully walked inside. Her attire screamed that she was definitely with the HOA of this place. After taking a few steps inside, she waved at the family, and especially the two sons. You all must be so excited, huh? I remember when me and my husband moved here. It must have been so many years ago when we did. We had our sweet boy, Randy. He's just perfect. He's about the same age as your boy right over there. She pointed right over to Jeff, who seemed to be surprised at first until he remembered what his mother had said. Ah, how wonderful, Margaret said while looking over to Jeff. He started shaking his head, trying to get her to stop while she was ahead. Well, my son is hosting a party in a couple months for his birthday. I know that it'd be lovely if both your sons could come and meet Randy. He's got the same two friends, and I'm just worried that he'll never grow out of those influences, she said, not saying any more before putting the smile back on her face. Jeff couldn't even get a word in before his mother answered for him. He would love to come and meet your son. Where's your house at? Just so we can be sure. She then asked the woman, turning over and moving right over to where she was at. As the two women began to discuss, making plans as mothers do, Jeff just sighed and plopped himself onto the couch while his father walked over. He didn't have to say anything but gave assurance by patting his son on the shoulder. And as the day fell to night, he was in his bed now. Seemingly the moving company had managed to arrive right on cue so that the furniture they had would be there for them to sleep in. Even though it was the same bed he had for many years, he couldn't sleep that night. He stared up at the moon, his eyes not blinking for long periods before finally turning over. At some point, he had managed to close his eyes and finally drift off to sleep. From night to day, it was now morning, and in the morning, Jeff slowly awoke, getting out of bed and brushing his teeth, doing his morning routine. Soon after, his brother joined him in his morning activities, eating afterwards and getting their clothes ready. Finally, both of them sitting on the couch to watch some morning cartoons. They both sat down, turned on the television, and began getting themselves situated. It seemed that today, of all days, they would not be doing anything special. However, it seemed like their mother had other plans. She walked over and began to snap at them. "You guys need to get out there. Seriously, you had all summer to watch TV. Now, you need to actually get out there and do something. Jeff, why don't you take your skateboard out and try to teach your brother? I'm sure he'd love to learn how to ride it," she said, getting Lou all excited at the prospect. In response, Jeff groaned and leaned back his head. His day of solitude and brain-numbing television was coming to a halt for now, as he had to go out and do something. He walked upstairs, putting on his shoes and grabbing his skateboard, meeting his brother outside, both of them walking down the street now. Jeff remembered that they had passed by a small skate park outside the neighborhood. Once there, he placed down his skateboard and looked over to Lou, sighing as he saw that he was extremely excited. "What you want to do first is place your left foot here." Jeff pointed to the middle of the skateboard, watching his brother following his instructions. "Okay, then you want to put your right foot here." He pointed to the far end of the skateboard. "Like this?" he asked his older brother. "Yeah. Now you're gonna move all your weight onto your back foot to stop the skateboard. It will rise into the air, but just so you don't go flying or racing off into the street or anything. Does that make sense?" he asked his brother, realizing his head was nodding in extreme excitement. Okay. I'm gonna push you slowly now. I want you to go over to that tiny hill and then do the same thing coming back." Once the instructions were clear, Lou began to slowly take off, rolling down the slope and gaining speed. He began to make noises while going over the hill, gaining some speed up quickly while going towards the wall in front. "Shift to your right foot," he yelled out. "Get down low and roll off the skateboard. The ground is soft, you'll be fine." After some convincing, his brother got low, losing his balance and rolling off the skateboard onto the smooth concrete. He slowly stood up, holding his head while he looked over to Jeff from down the ramp. "That was really cool," he yelled out, Jeff giving a sigh of relief. "Okay, now do the ramp coming back." "But I don't know how to get speed," his brother asked while shrugging. "Pretend it's like a boat. Use your foot as the paddle and drag yourself," Jeff said, watching his brother then extend his left foot. He slammed it onto the ground and pulled back, the skateboard moving him forward while he laughed and giggled. He felt almost happy at that moment, having fun with his younger brother. And just before he went down to meet him and congratulate him, a speeding skateboard came zooming by. Yelling out for his brother did nothing as the much older kid slammed into his younger brother, both of them tumbling onto the ground while the skateboards went flying around the area. He raced down there and slowly picked up Lou, seeing some scrapes and bruises, but nothing too bad until his brother began to grab at his shoulder. It hurts, he kept saying, tears welling up. I know, I'll get you back. Hey, you dumbasses need to watch where you're going." The older kid stood up now, throwing his helmet onto the ground and angrily pointing at the both of them. His hair was wavy, yet slicked back and very blonde. He seemed to be around Jeff's age, yet holding way more attitude than him. "Us? You're the one who wasn't paying attention. We've been here, man. You just showed up out of nowhere and came around zooming." Jeff then started to walk over. Both teens got face to face, both holding very pissed off faces, while the other two kids began to walk over towards them. One of them was big, a bit of a brute while having a hefty build, and the other was lanky, very frail, and looking like he had an excessive drug use. He stared at them all, paying attention to their details for whatever reason. "This park is for our use. You're in the way. So, unless you want your ass beat, you better get your ass on." He pointed away, the two boys crossing their arms. Jeff, however, wasn't intimidated. In fact, far from it. He stared down at the boys and wondered what information he could pry off of them before the confrontation. "Hey, what's your name, asshole?" he asked the blondie. "Randy. Why? You gonna report me to the HOA? I gotta tell you, my mom has a very high standing with them, so best believe you ain't doing shit." Jeff finally understood that this was the Randy, whom he had heard about from Evelyn. Hard to believe that a woman who seemed so nice produced such a monster. Let me teach you something. I won't let some rich-ass prick hurt my brother, insult my name, and threaten me with mommy. Jeff started to step closer. While he stepped closer, the boys huddled together, not expecting him to get enraged like this. It seemed their previous targets were much more meek. Take another step, man, and I'll gut you. Randy pulled out a tinier-looking blade. He held it up to Jeff, who just stared down at it. Of course, he had seen blades like this before, but he hadn't seen one that tiny. For the sake of the moment, he pulled out his own switchblade, the blade on it being much bigger than Randy's. Both of them had a stare down, gripping their blades while inching closer. Before long, Jeff swung at Randy, making a big slice on his forearm. As he made a scream, the heftier kid rushed at Jeff, throwing him to the ground while the lankier one just held him there. He thrashed, kicked, and yelled at them to get off. However, it wasn't much use with his force. So, instead, he stabbed the bully's hand, which made him loosen his grip, just enough to knee him right in the groin. After the big one was down for the count, he stood up to the frail kid, staring him down while he began to back up in fear. He held out his knife, pointing at the kid with a hunched-over posture that screamed danger. See, I could get past the name-calling, the cowardice, all of it, but you just had to hurt me, and especially my brother. I don't tolerate that disrespect lightly. He went to stab him, but missed intentionally, watching him scurry away like little mice. Jeff pocketed his switchblade and walked over to his brother, picking him up along with his board, and beginning to walk away. It seemed for now he had bested the bullies, though he knew something was about to go down. They made it home, both injured and needing some medical assistance, so their parents drove them over to the hospital where they were seen. Jeff lay staring at the ceiling, hearing someone finally come in and turning over to the door. He watched his mother slowly walk in and sit down beside him. Is Lou okay? He's fine, just a broken collarbone. I'm more worried about you. We just talked to law enforcement and Evelyn. Rennie will need stitches, but is willing to drop the whole thing if you apologize. Apologize? Mom, he broke Lou's collarbone and then he tried to stab me. You sliced him, stabbed his friend, scared the other half to death, Jeff. Right now, you were getting a slap on the wrist. I just don't want to repeat, so please just apologize and get it over with. She was now practically yelling at him, obviously upset with this. He couldn't say anything else, just letting his head droop as his mother walked out. Soon, Evelyn, Randy, and his mom all walked in to talk with him. Randy stood proud, acting like he had just won some kind of battle. Well, Jeff, is there anything you would like to say? Margaret asked. Randy, I'm sorry for hurting you and your friends. It won't happen again, I promise. His bangs covered up most of his left eye, leaving his right eye exposed to stare down at Randy. In return, he got a slight nod. So the other family left while Jeff was soon discharged along with Lou. The family was now back home, and as he settled into bed, same as last night, he kept getting flashes of the day, of losing control. These memories flashed at him while he stared at the moon, which now calmed him as he let in its embrace. He didn't remember falling asleep, but he did wake up the next day and decided to lay low, staying inside of the house. He knew that if he left the house, he would be tormented by Randy and his posse, so until the end of the week, he stayed in, watched TV, his hood pulled up close, and his hair drooping over his face. The start of school had soon arrived, and all the classes were back in session. Lou was sent off for his first day of middle school, while Jeff was in for 11th grade. As he soon stepped into the school, he can feel wandering eyes on him. Was this because of Randy? Did he have a hold on the school as well? He stepped into his first class, slamming his backpack down to the ground next to him. Once he was seated, he saw two familiar faces enter the room, which made him look up from his desk. It was none other than Randy, along with his twig of a friend. Randy, Keith, always a pleasure, the teacher said before patting them on the back. The teacher looked to be some kind of coach, which tipped off Jeff that Randy was possibly some kind of sports player. Either that or his mother was also high up with the school administrators and had a powerful hold on them. He turned from the teacher and was met face to face with the guy who humiliated him and his friends at the skate park. A wide smile appeared on his face, slowly walking closer until he could feel his breath. Hey there, you must be new here. What's your name? He didn't respond though, continuing to stare down at his desk while not saying a word to the would-be antagonizer. They then began to laugh at him, lightly poking at Jeff's face before trying to take off his hood. Jeff then stood up, staring down the two bullies before the coach quickly stepped in. Alright, calm down, you two, please. Take your seats. Jesus, got enough on my plate already. Randy then put his hands up and began to walk to his seat, both the friends laughing while they just stared on in amazement. For them, this class was going to be a fun time, and for Jeff, it was going to be hell week. Every week. In the middle of class, he started to hear something, like whispering from the back of the class. As the coach continued to go on with his history lesson, he turned around, faced with Randy as he threw a paper ball right at his face. It wasn't bad. It could be a lot worse. But it was the little things that were starting to irritate him. In the hall, Randy intentionally would shoulder check him, which made him stumble into other people. These instances started to build up a reputation for Jeff being the social outcast, the weird kid in class. During lunch, he would sit outside, alone and on a bench in the shade. He would constantly be on his phone and away from other students. One afternoon, however, he noticed a presence started to enter his field of view, which made him look up and back away as a precaution. He didn't want to have to deal with more bullying, but instead of Randy or some other athlete, he saw a girl who had a similar fashion sense to him. The girl sported an unknown band t-shirt, nice baggy pants with some black sneakers on, along with black hair that stood out to Jeff. She got closer to where she was right in front of him, giving a small wave. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. I know some of the other kids here are being assholes. I just figured you'd enjoy some company. She smiled at him, her smile being very wide. He didn't know if she was genuine or not, but still, he patted a spot next to him, which she took. She sat down and held out her hand with a smile on her face. I'm Jane, and you're Jeff, right? It's actually a little funny. It's like that one Adam Sandler movie. Funny story, actually. My dad met him once. And from then on, she continued to talk about her story of how her dad met Adam Sandler. He didn't know why the girl was still here or even talking to him, yet he was intrigued. Normally people were never interested in talking to him, yet this girl just seemed different. Why was she, out of all people, over here risking her social reputation just to talk to him? Maybe she thought that she could use a talking buddy. Maybe he was a last resort. However, as the period went on, these thoughts started to drift. New thoughts and feelings came instead. He now felt contempt with how the situation was. She seemed to have many outlandish stories, yet he couldn't help but listen in. He didn't care if they were true or not. They were just pure entertainment. And after a while, the bell finally rang, startling both of them as they looked around a bit. Shit, I must have been rambling on again. But if it's not too much trouble, I'll see you tomorrow, Jeff. She then stood up and began to leave, leaving the boy dumbfounded at what just happened. And the days continued, the bullying seeming out of sight as he looked forward to talking with Jane. He soon got her number and they started to text every day, before and after school. He wasn't very good at talking, pretty much a dry texter. He had always waited for her replies, while playing games, doing dishes, or something else. He once even went over to her house, having spun in the spacious area inside a living room, and where their love was kindled, and they shared their first kiss. One day, however, while walking the halls of the school to go to lunch, he was pushed into one of the lockers by Randy. He grabbed him by the collar and began to point at him with a very stern face. What the hell you think you're doing, Jeff? He asked, Keith and Troy standing off to the side so they could still be seen. What are you talking about? I've left you alone. You've been the one fucking with me. He pushed him off, some people gathering around now. You need to stop talking to her, man, or I'm gonna beat your ass. Who? Jane? Yeah, I've been trying to get back with her, but your ass keeps getting involved. And you keep getting involved with my business. The two boys then began to push each other. I'm gonna assume that she's your ex, saying how you want to get back with her and all. And if that is the case, then, truthfully, I didn't know Randy. But she's a big girl, and she could talk to whoever she wants, whether that's a social outcast like me or a midget with an ego the size of a pool. And that comment made him receive a swift right hook to the face, which pinned him against the locker. As all three boys began to give him a beatdown, he swiftly got away from them. Their looks of surprises were short-lived as Jess began to return the favor, grabbing the hefty kid, Troy, by the shoulders and slamming him into the locker. As his body slumped, he looked over to Keith. The scrawny kid tried to tackle Jeff, but was met with a punch right to his back, Keith now lying down on the floor. But before he could fight Randy, a teacher came out, splitting them all up and dragging them down to the front office. They were all waiting inside the office, which is when the principal came back in with the parents of Jeff and Randy. They all looked down at the boys, very disappointed in each of them, even though it seemed that Keith and Troy were dismissed. On the ride back home, he didn't receive a text from Jane, or anyone. His phone was dead silent, and he only got a stern talking to from his mother. She went crazy on him and began to scream up and down that ever since they got here, it was the same situation all over again. However, Jeff was not listening. He kept staring down at his phone, which was when his mother noticed. She grabbed his phone, which is when Jeff began to beg and plead for his mom to let go. It had gotten to the point where he was distraught, more than any kid should be over their phone. Though his mom wouldn't let up, he was sent away to his room, which had made him angry. As he slammed the door, he waltzed over to his computer, sitting on it for a few hours before finally deciding to get some sleep. For some time he didn't say anything, shutting down like before and just making his rounds. This was until the day the party came that had been said before a few months ago, to which he was awoken by his mother, who was shaking him awake. She was getting ready to go along with the rest of the family for the party, and he was going to go. "I'm not going, not after what happened." "Your ass is going to go, or I'm taking away your computer and the game console you got over there." So, with an exasperated sigh, he got up, moving from his bed and getting on the same attire, which had happened to be his hoodie and jeans. "Are you going to get dressed in that, or are you going to change?" "I guess I could get changed for it," he said sadly, walking over to his closet, which he picked out a nice white button-up, tucking it into some slacks and putting on some dress shoes. Once he was all finished, he met up with his family, walking down the street where they were met with glares. It seemed that the incident from before had made them the talk of this neighborhood. The family continued to move down the street before finally arriving at the party. "Alright, me and your father are going to meet up with some other parents. Try not to make a scene, and don't do anything stupid, okay? Go talk with some friends you've made in school or something. I don't know." She then ushered them away. Jeff groaned and followed Lou through the house, some kids staring at them as they seemed to know of the incident from before. Once they were in the backyard, they stared at the pool, gawking in amazement. "I do have to say, this asshole does have a nice house. What do you think? Should we jump in? Make up for the time that he hurt us?" Jeff asked his brother, nudging him slightly with a smile on his face. A simple nod was all he needed, so without any further hesitation, he jumped out of his fancy clothes and hopped into the pool, Lou following shortly after, both of them laughing and splashing each other all the while. Other kids paid attention to the two brothers, who were messing around in someone else's pool like it was their own. As if on cue, Randy had stormed out, yelling at the two to get out of the pool. The brothers hopped out and were handed towels by someone who was standing just a bit away. Randy was pissed. Now he knew he wanted revenge on this guy, so while he was getting dried and getting his clothes on, he grabbed his shoulders and threw him to the ground in a fit of rage. Jeff yelled out while getting tossed around, which is when the two other lackeys had filed in behind Randy. "Alright, Troy, Keith, hold him down. I'ma give him some real payback." Jeff looked up and watched as the other two began to hold down his arms and his legs, making sure that he couldn't move. Lou also watching, scared in the background. He slowly began to pull out a bigger switchblade, running his finger across it as he started to walk over to Jeff. "Watch. This is what happens when you cross my path. Spin on it, and then you try to run away like a scared little bitch," Randy said as he flicked the switchblade a bit. He had taken notes from Jeff from the last time, and as he walked closer to him, his face contorted into a smile. Jeff stared up at the bully, almost in a trance-like state while he waved the knife around. The blade shined in the sun, giving a glimmering effect as he tried to reach for his own knife in his pocket. Once he realized it didn't work though, he decided to take a deep breath and use all of his strength and adrenaline to push the big boy off of him. It seemed to work as Troy went sliding across the grass and almost into the pool. Rainey stared back and groaned at his incompetent friends, Keith sort of holding his hands up as he didn't want any part of this anymore. Pointing his knife at Jeff, he moved closer and faster than before. But before he got too close, he stood up, Jeff running backwards and grabbing a small glass and slamming it into Randy's head. As he yelled up in pain and dropped the knife, allowing Jeff to grab it, he pointed it at Randy in a fit of rage. Just then, Evelyn, Margaret, Peter, and Randy's father all rushed outside while staring ahead at the scene. "Jeff!" his mother yelled out, both parents now hustling over to the scene. Randy gave a smile to Jeff before putting on his hurt face again. He grabbed all over his body, telling his parents how much he was hurt. Jeff knew that he was just playing it up, but yet, either way, he was going to get in trouble. It seemed like something started to take over him, so he started to walk over before his dad grabbed at his shoulder. He looked at his father, only getting a stern look in return. "We tried so hard not to get your boy in trouble, but this is it. He keeps hurting my poor Randy, time and time again. You will be hearing from our attorney." Evelyn screeched out as the Hodex made a swift exit from the scene. The doors quickly shut to their home, the family now getting undressed as the tension was thick. Jeff's mom approached him and got real close to him, obviously upset. "I told you, just for one day, to be on your best behavior. I can't believe this. Why do you keep hurting that boy?" she berated, slightly pushing him. "He hurt us. He's been really mean," Lou replied, trying to get in between the both of them. "Not right now, Lou. This is between me and your brother. It doesn't matter what's happening. All that matters is what's going to happen now. They've been tormenting me for the past few months. I've gotten beaten up, thrown into lockers, made an outcast at school, but it's not like you even cared. You didn't care to ask, and you were more worried about that phone. What's happening on social media? Who's saying what about you or your family?" His mother winced, leaning back a bit as he finally started getting in her face. He wasn't taking any breaths or breaks, he just kept going on and on and on. You made us move here. You did this. Because of what you did. I didn't choose for you to beat that man within an inch of his life, but you did. You threw the first punch. All because of what? What?" His mother was trying to get an answer out of him, revealing why they had originally moved. "He made fun of Lou. He hurt Lou. So yeah, maybe I should have killed him. I should have had him beating his ass right there on the pavement. Because Lord knows you wouldn't have done it. You would have never done it. You only care about how you look, not either of us. Just shut the hell up." And with that, Jeff began to leave, and as his brother pulled on his jacket to get him to stay, he was thwarted with a quick toss. He slammed the door behind him, walking down the street in the middle of the night as it seemed the hours began to pass. He was now back at the skate park, where it all begun, and he pulled a lighter out of his jacket pocket. On it were two initials, J plus J. He began to play with the lighter, flicking it open, close, open, and close. Though as he soon closed it once more, he heard footsteps behind him, making him turn around to see who or what was behind him. To which he was faced with the same three goons that had tormented him since the start. Quickly standing up and staring down the three menacing freaks, he got into a fighting stance. Relax. I'm just here to apologize, that's all. I know things have been tense between us, especially after today, but Jane told me she has no feelings for you. All is good, Jeff, no beef between us now. Well, on that front at least. He extended his arms out wide, with a big smile plastered on his face. It seemed that the other two weren't laughing. Was this serious? Did Jane actually not like him? This whole time, was he misreading the signals? It had seemed to be so after some time of no contact. His stance weakened, and Randy walked over, patting him on the back and looking right into his eyes with malicious intent. Oh, we still need our payback for the other few times that you humiliated us. You know, recompense. In an instant, he backed up, pulling a handgun on him and aiming it at his head. The four were now in a standoff. They were going to kill him and leave him for dead if he didn't act up quickly. Without a second to spare, he grabbed his wrist, turning the handgun in a different direction. Of course, this startled Randy, and he tried shooting at Jeff to no avail. The bullet shot off into the air, the sound making both of them dizzy. The next few seconds were close, both of the boys now fighting over the fallen gun. Keith and Troy rushed in, throwing him into a skate ramp, and when they had picked up the gun and aimed it at him, shooting at his feet and making him run around the ramps like a prey running from a predator. The boys all laughed, saving the last few bullets for Jeff himself. They hopped down into the pit area and began looking around for him, whistling all the while. On the far side, he leaned up against a small ramp, breathing heavily while looking around. He felt something though. Looking up at the pale and full moon, he suddenly got a new burst of energy. Taking out his trusty pocket knife that he kept on him, he began to walk over. Keith noticed first, patting on their backs, but it was too late. Keith was stabbed in the neck by Jeff, causing blood to spurt onto the others. He threw his body down, pulling out the knife and slowly licking the blood. He turned his attention to Troy, stabbing him multiple times, and as his cries for Randy began to drown out, he choked on his own blood. Randy stared in horror as his friends were dead. For the first time, it felt real, and they wouldn't be able to call for their parents. So in a last-ditch effort, he aimed the gun at him, his hands quivering and shaking. This was no attempt, however. The gun was then smacked out of his hands. The now scared boy put his hands up, covering his face as he pleaded for his life. This is over. If you tell anyone what happened here, I will come back for you. Your mother, your father, and I'll make sure you watch him die. I'm not fucking around. This is your last warning. He let go of Randy, fixing up his hoodie and slowly walking away from the scene now, until he heard a whistle, turning around to see Randy holding a bottle of what looked to be some alcohol. It wasn't a big bottle, but he noticed that it had a rag on the top of it. Jeff quickly looked for his lighter, and noticed that it was gone, and that he was holding it. How about you burn in hell, you stupid piece of shit? He lit the rag, throwing it at him as it connected to his body. The Molotov cocktail hit his body, the fire now consuming him as he started to rage and scream out into the night. Soon after, some police cars and the fire department had arrived. However, Randy had already left the scene and taken the gun with him. Jeff was rushed to the hospital, thankfully being saved just in time before the fire had fully consumed him. Though his hoodie seemed to be burned onto his body, which surgeons were too afraid to come off as it may seriously injure and kill him. So instead, they left it on and gave the family the choice whether to cut it off or not for the future. After some time, he was finally allowed to be taken home, his family leaving the bandages on per his wishes. His brother Lou was now more afraid of his brother than before. All the protecting and helping seemed to do nothing for his little brother, as it seemed he couldn't change his new reputation as a survivor. In the middle of the night, Jeff awoke, being able to barely sleep with the bandages on, so he went to the bathroom. He grabbed onto the knife from before. He felt the weight of the knife in his hand. It felt like home when it was there, so he used it, began cutting the bandages off now. And as they slowly fell one by one, he was just left with his face. It was mangled, torn, being barely able to be put back together. His skin had turned white. His eyelids were singed off, leaving permanent black circles, and he was now worse than before. This began to make him cry, tears flowing down into the sink while he started to punch the mirror. Why? Why did this have to happen to him? Jane didn't love him, but maybe she could. No, how could she ever love someone like him? Someone who killed, someone who was ugly, who could never even smile anymore. But that was it. Remembering all the times that the bully had this devilish grin, maybe that was it. Maybe she could love him if he had a smile. And he tried. He tried and tried, but he could barely put one on for a single second before bursting into tears once again. In a fit of rage, he grabbed the knife once more, placing it onto the corner of his mouth, and slicing all the way up to his cheek. It was insanity. He began carving a smile onto his face as he figured out he was already disfigured. So why stop now? He knew that he couldn't change what had happened, but he had to keep going. If she liked someone who was already happy, if she liked someone like Randy, then maybe she could love him now. Though in this moment of insanity, his mother had wandered in. When she seen what had happened, she put a hand over her face, gasping, "Jeff, what have you done?" She then screamed out, his father coming in to see the carnage as well. "They're going to love me, right? Right? My face may be disfigured, but at least I'm smiling, no more hurting, right? Right, Mom?" He then got closer, and she backed away. You're not. Those words broke him. She couldn't even recognize her own son now. He had only one decision to make. If he wasn't her son, then he had no more parents. In his mind, he was no longer Jeff Hodek. So, he gripped the knife and pulled it up to her throat, slitting it without a second thought. And as his father yelled out, grabbing his wife and cradling her, the life slowly drained from her eyes, the blood pouring out. That's it. Go to sleep, Mom. Go to sleep. Son, do you know what you've done? He looked up at his son. Son? No, you have no son. I'm just a crazy man inside your home. Now go back to sleep, Peter, he said, pointing the knife at him. Go to sleep. Just go to sleep. Just go to sleep, he said with one more swing. He slashed his dad's face, causing him to yell out in pain, to which he reeled back the knife once more. And without any hesitation, he plunged the knife right into his chest. With a permanent smile on his face, he watched him slowly go down to the floor until he was finally dead. All that's left was now the two bodies of his former parents, bloodied and mangled just like him. His brother was standing at the end of the hall in his pajamas, covering his face slightly. While he covered his face, he could just see his unblinking eyes and the jet black hair. Go to sleep, Lou. His brother ran back into his room, crawling under the covers and holding his eyes shut. After a while of nothing, he slowly removed them and was met with a terrible, horrible sight. His brother, forever smiling right by his bedside, without so much as a blink or a word to him. Lou screamed out for his parents, before Jeff covered his mouth and made him go to sleep. With his brother's fate undetermined, he left the house through the front door, grabbing a butcher knife from the kitchen as he did so. He started to walk down the street, never saying a single word, with a smile plastered forever onto his face. He made it to Randy's house, standing outside for a little bit. He had gotten this far, so why stop now? He was already too far gone. So, he readied his knife and began to climb up a nearby tree. He remembered what had happened from before. The house party, the school, the bullying, the lockers, everything. And once he was eye level with his room, he began to crawl over. Since he was pretty nimble and lightweight, the long branch supported him, allowing him to land near the window sill and opening it up, allowing himself inside the room. However, he noticed something blocking him from getting inside, so with one swift kick he knocked it down, crawling through the window to see the sleeping Randy. He couldn't contain himself, slowly laughing and twirling the knife while he walked closer to the bully, who was only just sleeping peacefully in his bed. And he kept sleeping there for almost an hour before a knife tapped him on the shoulder. As his eyes slowly awoke, he saw Jeff in front of him. All his family members had been bound and gagged. Jeff, however, continued staring at him with the cold, dead eyes and a carved smile. His face contorted to show just the pure horror that he was experiencing. Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Randy, what did I say I was going to do if you kept coming after me? I told you that I would kill you and your family, all in front of you, and you would watch it, all of it. He then held the knife to Evelyn's throat. Please, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I stopped. I did stop. His cries made Jeff happy inside. That's it, that's all he wanted. So he lowered the knife and walked over to him, grabbing him by the cheeks with a big smile. Thank you. All is forgiven now. Really? He looked up, trying not to stare at him in the eyes. Of course not. Unlike you, I keep my promises. Now, Mom, please give us a good reaction. He walked over. He slowly sliced Evelyn's throat. Randy was powerless and screamed out as his mother began thrashing around. And as she began to slowly die, her husband tried getting out of the ropes that had been tied around their hands and legs. Now I think it's time for you guys to start going to bed. It's starting to get real late. It's time to go to sleep. He then stabbed the father in the eyes, killing him quicker than the mother. He put the bodies together, laying them on top of each other while walking over to the boy in his bed. Now, Randy, like I said before, it's time to go to sleep. It's time to go to sleep. And with one last scream, he began to stab him violently, and as he tried to pull the covers up, he kept stabbing over and over and over again without stopping. He kept making the knife pierce him over his body, his face, and everything. The scene began to make him laugh more than he'd ever have before in this moment, though he still wasn't done. He went downstairs and grabbed some liquor, alcohol, and any other drinks from their cabinet, pouring it all over his room. He then looked around in the drawers, finding the lighter that he had stolen from him, and when he picked it up, he noticed there was a note underneath it, from Randy to Jane. Dear Jane, I'm sorry for everything I did. I just want you to know I love you very much. I'm really sorry for all that I put you through, and I was hoping that we could try again. I put this in a letter because I know how much those mean to you, and if you take me back, I promise I won't mess up again. Love, Randy. Once he was finished with the letter, his smile didn't fade, but he felt rage. He lashed out, grabbing the dresser and slamming it onto the floor, which fell on top of their bodies. Stupid piece of shit! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! He then lit the letter on fire, throwing it right on top of Randy's corpse. And the fire slowly began to catch, the spilled alcohol grabbing onto the fire, spreading it throughout the room. In just one moment, the house began to catch ablaze, Jeff stepping outside onto the curb and staring at it. He couldn't stay for too long, however, because he had one last stop. Finally, he had made it to a familiar-looking house, to which, with almost no effort, he used his knife to pry open the door. After some time, he finally had made it inside the house, walking into the kitchen where he had noticed a lonely male figure standing around. He ducked behind a couch, slowly moving his head out to see that the figure had walked toward the stove. And now he knew that he needed to do one thing before this all was finished. Slowly but surely, he crept up behind the man. He grabbed the man by his face, covering his mouth and stabbing him in the abdomen multiple times. And as he went down to the floor, he continued to make his walk through the house, walking down a hallway with his knife, slowly scratching against the wall. This house and everything inside was Jane's. And once he had gotten to the door at the end of the hall, he slowly turned the knob, opening it up to see Jane sitting on her bed with headphones on. Once she noticed him, she took off her headphones, looking over and seeing that Jeff was standing in the doorway. Jeff? She called out, slowly putting down her phone. Hey, Jane, he waved with his bloody hand. Please don't be alarmed. I haven't come here to hurt you, I just want to talk. Just ask some questions, like, why did you betray me? Why did you never reach out? What are you talking about? She began to scooch away as he got closer and closer. He said that you never had feelings for me. It was a lie, I was just led on. I get it. I was the outcast and you just wanted to look good, but that's not fucking cool. His anger came through his voice, pointing the knife at her. Who said that? Who? Randy? If I, Jeff? Even with your accident, I still cared for you. I mean, seriously, I cared a lot about you. I talked to you at lunch every day. And maybe I did try to just get away from him, but it's true, you were fun to talk to. And about everything I ever said and did. You were my first true love. He seemed to be focusing on the wrong parts. His face couldn't show it, but at this moment he was confused by what she had said. Why are you using past tense? Why are you using past tense? He kept repeating his question while getting closer to her. You came in here and you're accusing me of stuff without even asking, Jeff. You ignored me, huh? Why did you ignore me? I didn't. My mom, she had just taken my phone and I just, look, you should just go. My dad may wake up. I still love you, Jane. I won't deny that. Even when it was presented to me, I tried my best to get to you. You have to believe me. You have to. You just have to believe me. I have to believe you, really. I cared for you. And you accused me of leading you on, you asshole. She hit him, pushing him back. Jane, I wasn't trying to accuse you. I'm sorry, okay? Really, I'm sorry. I was just here to ask you something else, if you'll give me the time. She thought about it for a moment, and then sighed and sat on the edge of her bed. Look, I want you to come with me, to run away. Our love is real, and everyone else, they don't see that people like Randy are trying to divide us. My mom was trying to divide us. But now, there's nothing else in the way. His mind was warped. He truly believed that he could just uproot her life and force her to run away with him. My father would be worried sick, first of all, and we're too young to run away. We're 17, Jeff. Where would we even go? Anywhere you want to. I would take you to hell and back if I had to. He grabbed her hand, but she pulled away. My dad would still be worried sick, and he wouldn't just let me leave with you. Also, what would your parents even say? She was asking now, trying to shut it down. Look, I'll see you at school tomorrow. Maybe we can talk about future things about that, but right now, that's the thing, Jane. They're gone. All of them. I got rid of them. Nothing can stand between our love now. Not my family, not your dad, not Randy, no one. He grabbed her hand again, causing her to look at him with a worried expression. And once she had realized it, she gasped, running out the door. And once he had heard the footsteps go down the hall, he heard a loud scream. He then joined her in the kitchen and held out his arms as if he was wanting a hug or affection. I did this for you, Jane. I did this so that we could finally be together, no interruptions. You're crazy. You're fucking delusional. You killed my dad. You killed your family. Now what? You expect me to be with you? You're sick. I'm calling the police. She grabbed onto her phone, but he grabbed onto her wrist in return. Don't. Jane, I love you, but if you call them, I'll do what I have to. He then pointed the knife at her. Then do it. Fucking kill me, Jeff. Kill the only person who saw you for how you truly were. The two lovers stared each other down, and she began to dial the phone. To this, he didn't kill her, but instead ran out the same way that he came in. He ran down the stairs and out through the gate, and once he was on the street, he kept running. Jeff, while still running out of the city lights, couldn't contain his laughter. It was all gone. His family, his enemies, his love, every part of his past life. All that remained was him, his clothes, his knife, the only things tying him to that past. And even those were now tainted. And as he continued to run, he kept laughing in the night. After making it into the woods, he was never seen again, slowly turning from a real killer into nothing more but an urban myth. Even after many months, people continued to talk about him. Newspapers, headlines, talking about more killings where he would stab the victims' eyes out, leaving them inside of their beds. The people nearby would hear screams, causing them to call the police, and the cycle would repeat. For months, he terrorized the city, the towns, and everything. All the while, Jane knew. She knew that it was truly him out there causing the series of murders. In fact, this pushed her more to become more studious than ever, becoming a renowned scientist who was very loved in her field. She had led the way for more vaccines to come out, and for healthcare to become more widespread. All the while this was happening, she had to take care of her little sister, who was soon in middle school. She believed that once she had collected just enough money for her sister, and made the right formula, she would finally be able to dedicate herself to the mission, to stop Jeff. And as long as he was alive and out there, she wouldn't give up, and would continue to pursue him. To pursue Jeff, the killer.